Okay, hello everybody. Welcome. I know I've been standing here for a while and you've been sitting there for a while, but it feels awkward if I don't at least say hello. So we're going to do Angular today, and we're going to do some web bits and pieces around Angular. But I feel like there have been some tooling issues over the last day, and we're really sorry about that. We'll get better, we promise. And for the moment, for today, we're just going to use one tool, right? And I'm going to show you the tool that we're going to use. It's the most powerful possible tool you have as a programmer, okay? And it's how we access humanity's greatest invention. And it's this little thing. Not specifically Chrome, because you might not have Chrome. You can't see it at the bottom. But it is a browser, okay? I'm a strong believer that browsers are, the World Wide Web is the greatest invention that man has ever had, primarily because it's allowed us to encode and make publicly available the sum total of human knowledge. There's so much stuff out there that you, in your lifetime, will never be able to access and consume all of it for free. Okay? It's just not a reality. It means that you can communicate with people that you would never physically have access to. It means that you can see and learn by taking things apart that you didn't build. It's basically like who as a kid took apart their toys to see how they work, even simplistically. Come on, anyone? Right? This is like taking apart other people's toys without them even knowing you're taking them apart, which is pretty awesome, right? So it lets you do cool stuff. Okay? They usually have really awesome tools baked into it, and I'm going to be using Chrome, but we'll see how Firefox, which I think you have installed on your machines, goes. It's an exceptional browser. Hey, how's it? Roll in. Okay, and it lets you do cool stuff. So we're not gonna talk about the errors on the UFS homepage, but they're there. Okay, so we're just quickly gonna click that button and hide it. Shh. Okay, but let's play a little bit, right? Because we can go and we can see everything. Let me try and zoom in a little bit. We can see everything that we need to, and the structure of the page, and we can tweak it, and as a part of tweaking it, learn from it. So we can, fiddle around and play. And this is only on our machine, right? It doesn't affect anybody else, but it gives us the ability to understand how this stuff works. I spelled that right. And not just accessing the DOM and the DOM tree, we can do tons of stuff, right? So we can write code that interferes with the page, and for example, replaces all of the images on the UFS page. Hey, who loved this movie? I love this movie. It was an amazing movie. I cried with the spaceship, when Benny finally built a spaceship. Anyway, but besides the point. So fiddling around and breaking the CSS on UFS's site was not what we were supposed to be doing today. But I thought it was a really, really nice point to segue. So, oh wait, no, before we do that. So these tools are amazing. Ooh. It's clear the error. These tools are amazing, and they're phenomenal, but it's important to know the constraints behind one's tools. Let's just pop this out into a separate window for the moment. Okay, so JavaScript's a great language, right? Who likes JavaScript? I'm going to put two hands up. I love JavaScript. And the reason why I love JavaScript is because it is the cross-platform that we were promised. Okay? Not Java, not Python, JavaScript. It runs on everything. It runs on microprocessors. It runs on every single form factor of device. It enables the internet, which is cool. But it's got some idiosyncrasies, right? They talk about JavaScript being designed in 2 weeks, and that shows. So there are some fundamental decisions made in the language that don't make sense. But it does cool things, right? So it has basic arithmetic in it. So 1 plus 2, what's that going to give us? Come on, don't leave me hanging, guys. If this is too hard for you, then I think we might need to discuss the curriculum a little bit. Okay, that's going to give us what? 3, yes, thank you. Okay, what's this going to give us? What's that going to give us? Can I get a consensus? Sorry? 1.03. Okay, it's going to give us 2.03000002. So JavaScript's good at arithmetic, right? I would run my bank account through this. And it's got lots of cool features, right? So it's got arrays built into it. Okay, and then that shows the the representation of array as output. It's got objects built into it that are really lightweight and loose. And it's got the ability to manipulate this stuff. So for example, you can add two arrays together, right? And get empty string as the result, which is cool. That's exactly what we want. You can equate these two arrays and get false, because obviously they're not the same. We can clearly see that they're not the same array. And in fact, you can do similar things with objects, right? So we can get object-object, which is also fine, and then we can equate those two. But it doesn't stop at that, because we can add these things together. So for example, we can say array plus object, and then obviously the result is the string object. I think that's obvious, right? For everyone? And because we've got, is it transitive or is it commutative? I can never remember where you swap the parameters around. Commutative, that's right. So it's commutative, so we can just swap them around and get the exact same result that we're expecting, right? So adding an array to an object is 0, because that makes sense. Okay.
They know you're joking.
Oh, you do know I'm joking, right? I'm sure they know. They must know. Okay, so every tool has constraints, and it's one of those things that JavaScript has some historic idiosyncrasies with it, because it is a very old language. It's over 20 years old now, I think. Over 20 years old. And it was designed at a point in time when we had no idea what this worldwide thing could do, nor what we should use it for. So there's stuff that was built in there that doesn't necessarily make a whole bunch of sense. But there's one important first rule of the web, and that's don't break the web. So moving forward, we can't change any of this stuff. We just have to live with it. Because if we change any of it, we break stuff that's already out there. Okay, so that's a valuable thing to remember. So let me unbreak this and then carry on. I promise this probably will have some kind of tangential point at some point in time. Okay, so who am I? So I work for a company called BBD. It's the letters on my shirt. We do bespoke software development. I think we've spoken about ourselves at length. A bit about myself. I'm a Google developer expert in web technologies. I'm not quite sure what that implies yet, but I think basically it means like I'm a web cheerleader, and they're happy that I'm a web cheerleader. So I might not be the hero that we want, but I'm the hero that we have, damn it. All right, cool. So let's talk about who's seen this site, who's used this site today. Okay, come on, there's a lot of liars in this room.
You have it in your program.
Yeah, exactly, basically, right? So pretty cool site. Started off on one ASP.NET IIS machine. So if somebody tells you that IIS can't scale and .NET can't scale, lying. Okay, so pretty cool. This site I learn a lot from. I think we all learn a lot from, if we're honest. It's a great resource, and it shows that we wouldn't necessarily have knowledge or an education as programmers if we didn't have stuff like this, if we didn't have the internet. Okay? So even if you never, ever write any web code, the web is essential in you being able to do what it is that you do, to share information and share understanding. So that's pretty cool. I like that site. Stuff like this. This doesn't exist for everyone. This is a website, Mozilla Developer Network, that is basically where Google, Mozilla, Microsoft, W3C, so the World Wide Web Consortium, everybody combines all of their shared knowledge about how browsers work, different idiosyncrasies, how to explain how browsers work, JavaScript, HTML. Come on, roll in. You're not too late. And they all work together, right? So isn't this some kind of awesome utopia where these companies that are traditionally seen as big evil corporates are working together to build amazing stuff? And this is, like, if you never leave a site but this one, and you go through everything here, you'll never reach the end, and you'll learn perfectly how to build on the web, if that makes sense. Maybe not server-side software per se, but everything that accesses the front end. And like, who thinks front-end development is easy? Is everyone too shy to say it now? Yeah? Okay. Who thinks front-end development is hard? Okay, it's both. It's both at the same time, because it's easy because it's super accessible, but it's hard because it has constraints that nothing else has. You have to build for people who you do not know where they are. You don't know who they are. You don't know what device they're accessing stuff on. Okay? You are in no control of what the browser is that they're going to use. And those are things that make it really, really difficult and unique constraints for web development. But anyway, so this site is great. I can recommend taking a look at it. And I've spoken a little bit about JavaScript, but I'm not going to teach you JavaScript today. Okay, who likes dynamic languages? Okay, I like dynamic languages. I really, really do. Who hates dynamic languages? Okay, Rory. Rory's the only one brave enough to put up his hand. Stand up, Rory. Okay, cool. So a lot of people dislike. Who has used dynamic languages in large teams? Okay. So maybe that's why we have a distaste for dynamic languages at certain times. Because dynamic languages rely on a lot of discipline, right? If you don't have discipline, or if one person in the team doesn't have discipline, it becomes a big problem really quickly. So we like typing. Sometimes I don't, because I'm a grognard. I like dynamic languages, and I'm unapologetic about it. But the people who built the framework that we're going to be using believe that if you're going to build in large corporate contexts, or if you're going to build on the open web, modules, reusable software, typing is essential because it gives you information as to how to use stuff, as well as gives you a little bit of a safety net. So I don't believe in a safety net. I feel the compiler is an optimization step, not a safety net. And if you think that my code compiles, therefore it works, I think that's a mindset that you need to break out of. And hopefully when we go through the testing tomorrow, Rory, with a little bit more energy and enthusiasm, will convince you that there's more than just compile it to make sure your code works. Okay, so TypeScript is what we're going to be using today, and one of the things that we're going to be talking about, right? Now, TypeScript is pretty cool, but the thing that's coolest about it is because we've got this moving paradigm of which browser people are going to use and which, basically what JavaScript they'll be able to run on their machine. Now, TypeScript says, cool, well, I'll target the lowest common denominator, and I'll let you use newer features. I'll let you write higher order functionality and then compile JavaScript to JavaScript. Is there any other ecosystem that works like this? I don't think so. I think JavaScript is literally the only ecosystem that compiles to itself as like an assembly language target. It's weird. But anyway, so TypeScript itself is like a superset of JavaScript. Everything that is JavaScript exists in TypeScript. It's just got a couple extra niceties as well as the optional typing. Okay, everybody with me? Smiles around. Great. Awesome. So now, we're going to segue to a person who I respect a lot and also whose language I will never, ever, ever use. Who's written anything in Perl? Anyone? I'm expecting the older folk to put up their hands. Come on, guys. I know you've written some Perl code. Okay. So Perl is, I think the best description I heard for Perl is that it's write-only code. One doesn't read, debug, and fix Perl code. One just deletes it and rewrites it. Okay. But the person that created it was a foundational pillar of our industry, Larry Wall. And he created this language that a lot of the features that we see in JavaScript, Ruby, Python, and all of the interpreted languages have borrowed from, right? So it was a very iconic moment in what dynamic programming languages were going to become. And he's got this great thing where he talks about the three virtues of a programmer, okay? Laziness, impatience, and hubris. And if you walk away today with nothing beyond this, okay, hang on to those ideas because it'll make you a better programmer. So firstly, laziness, the quality that makes you go to great effort to reduce overall energy expenditure. It makes you write labor-saving programs that other people will find useful and document what you wrote so you don't have to answer questions. Okay? So you're going to write stuff that just automates things for you because you don't want to do manual tasks yourself. Okay? Impatience. The anger you feel when the computer is being lazy. This makes you write programs that don't just react to your needs, but actually anticipate them, or at least pretend to, right? So it means that you're not just going to say, well, it's fast enough, right? You're going to make it better. You're going to fix it. You're going to care about performance. Hubris, and I think this is probably the one that we feel most frequently, is the quality that makes you write and maintain programs that other people won't want to say bad things about. Okay. Right, because we just showed that you can, with the error on the UFS homepage, that Everything's open source, right? We care about making sure that our code is well structured, well designed, well thought through. So what I'm going to focus on today is laziness, okay? Because I'm just going to go through browser tabs. I'm not going to leave this browser window unless something crashes. And I'm going to do everything off of official documentation. There's nothing here that you don't have access to, and I encourage you to follow along using the official documentation. And that's because it'll give you a reference point where you'll go back later and you'll think, Mike said something about that I didn't fully understand, and you'll know where it is to look. You'll have a visual point to go back to. Does that make sense? Smiles all around. Yes? Yes. Great. This room's better. I can actually see people. It's far more accessible.
See me.
All right. So, additionally, I like fishing. I like fly fishing. I think it's very therapeutic, right? Gives me the most analog possible thing to do that's far away from any technology. I'm not going to belabor this particular metaphor too much, but I think the nice thing about it is that what I want to do today is show you that the stuff is out there, but the stuff is not far to reach. It's not alien. It's really, really close, actually. So I'm hoping to teach you to fish and enjoy the experience. Okay. All right, so let's move straight along. We're going to go to 2 sites that you really need to care about. Well, I hope we only go to 2 sites. How's it? You're just in time, hey? Sure, we're about to get busy. Okay, so Angular.io. It's pretty easy to type out. It looks like this. It's pretty neat design site. This is where all of the documentation is, and we're actually just going to go through the official tutorial. Okay? And I'm going to work through it and talk you through it. And it is this thingy here. So if we go docs, I think it's docs, or actually just click on get started. There's a big button on the home page. They wouldn't have put a big button on the home page if they didn't mean us to click it. Okay? Now the only challenge is that all of these instructions are going to talk to you about the Angular CLI. The Angular CLI is an amazing tool. But as we said in the beginning, we've got some tooling issues, so we're not going to use the CLI. What we're instead going to do is we're going to augment this with something that works a little bit like the CLI, and is isn't really based off of the CLI, but gives you a lot of the functionality. Oopsie, oopsie, oopsie. And it is stackblitz.com. Okay? So stackblitz.com is pretty cool because I can push that button and I can get a full Angular application up and running, hosted on the internet somewhere. Okay, I'm going to do that right now. Or React. So if you want to play around with React, if you're that type of person, there's a thing that you can also play around with not having to worry about your local machine. Okay, so we're going to click on Angular, and we're going to get a thing that is going to initialize and give us our first Angular application. Okay, so stackblitz.com, big Angular button. So we're going to make sure that everybody can do that before we carry on. And we'll go through the stuff a little bit later. Are we going to go through it later? Or are we going to go through it now? Let me just see. Yeah. So we're going to go through that later. No, we're going to go through it now. Okay, we're going to go through it now. So we made the decision to use this probably about, an hour and a half ago. So what could possibly go wrong, right? I'm sure everything's going to be fine. I haven't tested everything that we're going to do in this, but it'll give us a good learning experience. So I would ask if you would be patient when things inevitably go wrong. Let's see if we can get stuff through. All right, so let me show you what we're going to build. Okay, we're going to build a hero management application called the Tour of Heroes. Oh, hey, awesome. No, the default one also runs on StackBlitz. Okay, so don't click this button. Don't click that button. You don't know where I am. Don't copy that URL. This is where we're going to be. Okay, where we're going to end up building something that shows a list of heroes and gives us the ability to click and edit set hero, save it, and we'll see how far we go. We might need to, Mr. Awesome. If I spell, I promise you I can actually type. Typing and talking is really, really hard, apparently. Okay, cool. And this is essentially it. And it looks super simple. It looks relatively trivial. But as a part of doing this, we're going to understand and unpack all of the important bits and pieces to scale this out over large-scale software development. Okay. So to close that up, we're going to now segue a little bit and we're going to talk about what we see here. Now, if you were to use the Angular CLI to create a new Angular application, there would be more stuff than this, but I want you to focus on the stuff that's in here, and this would be what sits inside your source folder. Okay, so this is just the stuff we care about to build an application. So when you look at the Tour of Heroes stuff and see a whole bunch more and start wondering, don't panic, keep calm. It's just things that make it work. So as an aside, as an interesting aside, you've all used Visual Studio Code over the last few days, right? Has anybody here not used Visual Studio Code yet? Okay, good. This is running the exact same stuff that Visual Studio Code is running. That's another... Sorry? It is. Visual Studio Code is built in Node.js with HTML running on top of it, and I can actually show you that. Let's segue completely now. Okay. So I think I can view developer tools, view debug content. No, I can't. Okay. All right. So they locked that down. But you used to be able to do this on Visual Studio Code so that you can actually see how Visual Studio Code itself was built. Not that that's a big problem because you can go and look at the source code anyway online. All right. The nice thing about it is that the IntelliSense that you get in here is the same as Visual Studio Code because that IntelliSense is actually written in TypeScript, which is pretty cool. Anyway, so what we care about here is let's start with the simple stuff. Any HTML page or any HTML application starts with an index.html. Okay? If it's honest about it, that is how the internet was designed. This one is really, really simplistic. You should normally see a whole bunch more text here that's got markup and so on and so forth. I think this is one of those points. Can everyone see that? Okay, this is one of those points that Stack Blitz simplifies. You should see HTML, you should see a head section, you should see a body section, and this My App should be in the middle of your body section. Okay, but at least this is really simple to start with, and we don't need to look at this file again today. Then let's look at the styles.css that this will automatically link in. We're going to tweak this as a part of the first step of the exercise, but beyond that, we're not going to play around very much with this. This is just where you put your CSS. And we're not designers, so we're not going to be doing design work today, so we're not going to tweak too much on the CSS. The polyfills, I'm going to speak about this super briefly, primarily because a lot of this isn't needed because of the browser that I'm in. But a polyfill is basically something that puts a little bit of extra functionality inside your application that fakes out advanced features in older browsers like Internet Explorer. Okay. And then we can ignore that file safely, and we can move on to where your application starts. So the first thing, and the thing that bootstraps, let's see if we can make some more space here. Yeah, let's close that. Cool. The thing that bootstraps your Angular application, when we first start seeing something that doesn't look like simple JavaScript code, is your main.ts. So this is, when your index.html gets loaded up, this is the first thing that gets called. And what it does is it imports a whole bunch of stuff. Now this import syntax is ES 2015 standard, which means that all modern browsers have this as a native browser feature, but you'll find that TypeScript builds this into older JavaScript that can run in older browsers, so not the latest Firefox, Chrome, Safari, etc. And Edge. Edge can also do this. Let's not insult Edge. Okay. And it's got several imports that are very specific to this application. So the first thing, if we see, remember we just looked at that polyfills folder? So that's an R code import. And this is an all-expansive R code import, which is saying, well, I just want to import everything from that file with side effects. I don't want to specifically get exports from it. The following two is imports that are asking for particular things. So we're asking for a setting that says enable prod mode, and then secondly, we're asking for platform browser dynamic from Angular. And this is Angular stuff that we don't really need to care about, and that's how it knows to build itself in an application. Okay? The only thing that you need to know here is that it doesn't have the // which is a Unix-style relative path to the directory that you're in. It uses this npm namespace that is at Angular. So that anything that's at Angular / is all of that Angular specific code. Okay, we're going to use that quite a bit to import the framework bits and pieces. Okay, and then finally we're getting into our code again, which is we're going to look in the app directory relative to where we are, and we're going to get that app module. We're going to explicitly import the app module, and when we bootstrap the application, we're going to bootstrap the app module. And that is the module that represents the whole tree that is our whole application. Okay, so let's go take a look at that for a second, and we'll see the exports, the other side of this. So if we look at our app module, you'll see at the bottom here, which is where I want to focus on first, there's an export keyword, right? Export class app module. So firstly, we've got a class, which is TypeScript and ES 2015's way of completely lying to you that JavaScript is object-oriented, because it's not. It's a prototypal language. We're not going to get into those details, but that is a fake. And importantly, it tells me explicitly what this file can export. So if there was any code in here, any functions or private classes or anything, it would not make that globally available. Now, this seems like a supernatural thing for those that come from any other same language, but it's important to remember that before 2015, everything in JavaScript was global. So like PHP global, right? Bad global, ugly global. So this is an important thing to understand, and it's one of the nice things about TypeScript is that we can now write same code, and we don't have to worry about it not running in the target browser. Okay, don't break the web. Rule number 1. Awesome, and now there's a whole bunch of other stuff. So you'll see that, firstly, the first part by convention is importing a whole bunch of things from Angular, so the module, the browser module, and the form module. And then the second thing is 2 things that is our code, so the app component and the hello component. Okay? Right. So the ng module, so the first thing that we're importing is a decorator, an ES next decorator pattern, which isn't a completely ratified standard, and this diverges from JavaScript. This is that superset stuff. But it gives you either the same functionality, the same idea as you'd get in attributes in C# and annotations in Java. Okay, so is this familiar to anyone? Okay, and it works in the same way. So there's a lot of convention in Angular, and this is the way that we apply a little bit of configuration on top of that convention to bind the stuff together. Okay, so here we've got 3 things. Firstly, an imports, and that says, well, this module relies on these other modules. If you were at the earlier session, this is similar to what you would have in your Maven file, right, in your POM, where you would specify that these are the submodules that this thing needs. Declarations, this is saying, as a module, these are things that I am initializing, that I'm making available to pick up and bootstrap in the application. And Bootstrap is saying, well, this is the thing that I'm actually going to create. So Angular has the idea of these component hierarchies, where you create big components that are composed of lots of little components. Okay? The best advice I was ever given about how to build large JavaScript applications is that you don't. You build lots of little JavaScript applications and you cobble them together. Okay, and that feeds into our idea of composition over inheritance. Does anybody have ever heard that? Familiar to anyone? Cool, awesome. So that's what we're going to do here. But then everything has this app component that is the heart and soul of the Angular application. It's the first entry point. So we're going to take a look at this app component over there, which is one up. And the app component also has similar stuff. So firstly, it imports the decorator, the component decorator, and it exports a class. And the class is a simple property that is name. Okay, so that's how you write a property in ES 2015 plus. Perhaps at that point, does anyone, I haven't explained why I keep saying ES rather than JavaScript. Okay, who knows who owns the trademark JavaScript? Rory, put your hand down, put your hand down. Who knows? Who owns JavaScript other than my people? Oracle. Oracle owns the trademark JavaScript. ECMA script is the European Computer Manufacturers Association, and they actually look after the spec that is JavaScript, of what we call JavaScript. So what we call JavaScript is actually ECMA script. So when we talk about the feature sets, we talk about ECMA script 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then next, and then it gets weird. Because after ECMAScript 5, they decided that these monolithic, massive language releases weren't working because it would take like 5 years to get a standard implemented. And they went to an annual release cycle. So they've got very, very small feature sets that they believe browsers can really rapidly release. Okay? So like when we talk about ES 2015, that's the last big feature set. From then on, there's tiny little additional bits and pieces, including they're busy ratifying ECMAScript 2018 now, that has some cool stuff. 2017 has a syntax in it that's very similar to C# async await, if anyone's familiar. So cool stuff. You can safely forget that information for the rest of the day. Okay, so we've got our component, and inside our component we've got our component decorator, and then there are 3 things that we care about in our component decorator's metadata. So the selector, the template, and the style. Okay, so let's go from the easiest one. The style gives us a CSS file that we can simplistically link to, that we can write some code in, that gets scoped. I hope that works in Stack Blitz. But anyway, that gets scoped just to that one component. Okay, it, at compile time, puts in very specific selectors that make sure that that style is not applied to the whole application, which gives you really valuable isolation. The next part is the markup. So there's the idea is that there is the TypeScript, which is the component. There's the template, that is the little bit of markup code, and then there's metadata that binds the two together. Okay, and the metadata says that this is the markup that we're going to use, and there you can see that name field over there in the double curly braces binds to that name property over there. Okay, so those two hook up together, which is pretty cool. And I don't think we're going to get any auto-completion here. Unfortunately, code would give you that. If anybody wants to see it in action, we can look at it a little bit later. But it lets you write cool stuff. And then finally, the last piece that we care about out of this is the selector. Okay? And that's because what we're doing is we're creating custom HTML elements, like divs and h1s and p tags and inputs. We're creating our own. Okay? So from a markup perspective, if you remember our index.html, and I said we wouldn't access this file again, but basically I lied because I'm improving. But you can see that our my-app is my-app here. Okay, so we're creating this thing that looks like an HTML element. Angular's looking for it, and it's putting all of our stuff inside there. And that's a really, really important point to start off with. Okay, so now I think we know enough about, are there any questions? We should field those now before we start writing code in Angular. I'm going to write it with you. Okay, so let's see if you can type faster than I can. Okay, no, not really. I wasn't really challenging you. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, let me go back here. Application shell. Okay, let's do it in here. Let's ignore that. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, we created the application. We don't need to serve it because it's already on Stack Blitz. So we're just going to firstly change our title here. So we're going to make a title rather than name. And I'm going to open it to the side so you can see the live preview. Okay, so the title is going to be Tour of Heroes. Okay, so that's fine. And on our component, we just want to get rid of all of that. And I didn't even show the hello component. Okay, let's just delete that because I don't know what it does. Okay, that shouldn't be there. And then following that, I think we're just going to create an h1. Okay, great, thank you. Which is just a heading. And, oh, I can't find file hello component. Oopsie. I shouldn't have deleted that. Man, I'm going to get into so much trouble today. This is great. This is great. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. I've got a bad habit of going off script. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to write that title into the page. So what we do is we use our mustache syntax, simple read-only stuff that says, I just want to write some stuff into the markup, into the HTML. And that will just take our title and put it straight into the markup, which is pretty simple. Okay, we saw that previously, but I think this is one that we're going to build on. And we're going to make it look right. So I'm just going to copy the stuff across because I don't think you want to spend the next 3 hours watching me type CSS and making spelling mistakes. I don't think that's going to be fun. All right, so now we're done with the style, and then it'll look the same. So I give you permission to copy the styles and not type them out, but everything else you must type out. Okay. All right, so back to the app component. We've created the styles, and this gives us our very simple shell that we're going to work off. We want to put something meaningful in it, right? So what we're going to do, and this is where we would use the CLI, which gives us a really cool Rails-like, and I believe Django-like scaffolding feature. Okay, so it would create all of the plumbing that we needed, but we're not using the CLI, so we're going to right-click, which is something I particularly dislike doing. Are you okay? Everything okay? So I'm going to right-click here, and I'm going to go Component, Generate New Component. Can you see that? So on my app folder, I'm going to generate new component. I'm going to call it my Heroes component, and it'll hopefully do the right thing. Okay. And once we've done that, we should see a brand new component that gets created. And importantly, I really hope it does this. Yes. You'll see that it automatically, because it knows how to do it best, it imports the Heroes component into your module that says, well, this thing must exist as a part of this tree. So it's relatively easy to get something new up and running there. Then we're going to create our own hero. So we're going to start off with just a simple name. So we're going to create something called hero equals windstorm. I don't know who comes up with these names. Okay, hero equals windstorm. Exactly the same as we did on our title. We're now going to throw all of this away, and we're going to just write hero out. Okay? And you'll see that it doesn't appear here. Okay? And it doesn't appear here because we've created this component, but nowhere are we using this component. So to be able to use this component, we're going to go to our app component HTML, and we're going to here write app. Is it app? Please tell me it's app, otherwise it's going to confuse me. App heroes, yeah. Sure. Okay. We're going to write app-heroes as if it were an HTML element itself. And then we'll see it'll immediately reload, and we should just see our simple windstorm text. Okay. Great. We're actually under Hero Editor now. So if you're in the Angular documentation and you want to follow along, it's under angular.io/tutorial/toh-pt1, Hero Editor. And we're just missing the CLI bits and pieces. Okay. So if there's ever anything, you can go back to that point in time, and if you get left behind, you can copy and paste the stuff from the bottom of the page. Okay? Cool. Awesome. Great. So we've got our hero, we've got our title and our heroes, which is great. But this is just a string. So we want to do something a little bit more complicated than this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a class that is going to represent our heroes. And it's just going to be called hero.ts. Okay? And this is going to export a class of hero. Okay? And our hero is going to have two things. So it's firstly going to have an ID that is of type number. And there you can see how you optionally annotate stuff with types, just by after the colon of a property, for example's sake, and we'll highlight that out in future. And then it's going to have a name that's of type string. Okay. Now at runtime, technically this doesn't exist. That typing doesn't exist, these properties don't exist. They only exist when they get added to and created. So that's an important thing to remember, is that TypeScript is giving you some training wheels to help you with typing. It's giving you some tooling and auto-completion, but it doesn't actually exist at runtime. Because at runtime, you just have JavaScript. Okay, so following from that, we've now exported our class. We now want to import our class into our heroes component. So we want to use it. Okay. Now, when we import it, it's important to know, important, not funny. Damn, you are a tough crowd. Okay, that this is one folder up and in the root of the application. So we're going to go .. to go one folder up from our heroes component, and then we're going to import hero. Okay. Now, something important to note there is we're leaving off the TS from up here. Okay, can you see that? And that's because at runtime, the TypeScript doesn't exist. So we don't want to give it an extension that's not going to be there when it compiles or when it executes. So we omit that, and by convention, the tool that's actually WebPack It's complicated, but picks up JavaScript files. It looks for something that's hero.js rather than hero.ts. That's the simplest possible explanation we can give. Anyway, so we're going to import hero from it. Oh, the Visual Studio formatting commands work. It's going to save me so much. Okay. So Alt-Shift-F. Alt-Shift-F. Alt-Shift-F will format your code nicely. Make it look pretty. Okay, Alt-Shift-F. Sorry?
Firefox has a menu for that as well.
Is it?
So there's a menu and
Oh, sorry for you. Okay, all right, where was I? Yes. So now we've got the hero in here, and we want to change this from being a simple string. So the first thing we can do is we say, okay, cool, we're now going to annotate this property as a hero. So we're going to call it hero, okay, which is cool. But now we want to initialize it. Okay, so we're going to initialize it as an object, just an anonymous random map of properties. And you'll see that it starts complaining at us with the red line, which is pretty cool, saying that, well, we need to assign ID and we need to assign name. These are things that are valuable from a JavaScript space. Okay, or from any language space, but JavaScript's fast and loose with this. So we're going to say ID colon 1, and we're going to say name colon windstorm. I can't say that with a straight face, I'm sorry, I have to do the voice. Okay, so we're going to set windstorm, and then importantly, we're now going to take our heroes component, and we're going to write this onto the page, because we've broken this. If you see there, it's just got object, object, which is the two-string representation of that object hash. So what we're going to do, we're going to throw that away, and we're going to write h2, and it's going to be inside the double curly braces, that's mustache syntax, and we're going to go hero.name, and then we're going to add details. Okay, windstorm details. So the cool thing that you see there is that very fluently we can say, well, inside the curly braces we're going to get stuff that we're reliant on from JavaScript, and we can just augment that with normal HTML content, which is great. Then we're going to create a div and a span, and we're going to close the span and close the div, and inside that we're actually going to have two of those. Okay, and we're going to have ID in one, and we're going to have name in the other. Okay, and inside here we're now going to get to go hero.id and hero.name. Cool, save, done. And we get ID1 name windstorm written out. We're not going to use this extensively, but there is sometimes the desire to now put additional stuff or do additional stuff from a template perspective to this data without changing the data under the hood. Case in point, if we wanted to uppercase the hero name without changing the hero name, without changing the data, we could use the Angular pipe operator. So those of you that work in a Unix context, you'll be familiar with piping stuff between little applications. Angular's got a similar idea inside the mustache template. So we're just going to pipe it to a pipe operator called uppercase. Okay, and that's going to uppercase windstorm, which is great. You can write your own pipes, which are immensely useful when you've got formatting for dates and times or for your own objects. Okay, which is pretty cool. So that's great. Don't spend too much time and effort writing this code that I've just written, because we're going to throw it away. Okay. So sorry for those of you that have been typing. I should maybe have said that beforehand. This next piece I want you to keep, though. Okay. So this is fine for read-only details, but what we actually want to do is we want to edit this thing. Okay. We want bi-directional data binding. So we've shown one way, very simple read-only, don't subscribe. Now we're going to show how you would do two-way data binding onto an input, for example's sake. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a label, and the label is going to say name colon, and then I'm going to create an input. Okay, and that input's going to have a couple things. So firstly, it's going to have a placeholder, which is just vanilla HTML placeholder. That's going to say name, and that gives us some nicety. And then after that, I'm going to create this thing called ng model, and I'm going to set that equal to, no worries, I'm going to set this equal to hero.name. Okay, great. Now, that's not going to do anything at the moment. Okay, it's not going, it shouldn't do anything. I don't know why it says hero.name, but it shouldn't do that. Sorry? I know that's happening next. Okay, so Angular, the one thing that's super weird about it, and gives it its own flavor, is that it uses different characters to indicate the different types of data binding and event binding and generator stuff. This is if you use other frameworks, it would either have a data dash or an ng dash that prefixes. That style is a little bit older school, and that was the mandated style by the W3C. Nowadays, it's fast and loose, right? Whatever you want to do. It's part of the extensibility features of HTML. So to be able to do that, we want two-way data binding, so we're going to combine two different operators. The first thing we're going to do is use the property binding operator, which says that I've got code, or I've got data that exists in my JavaScript, and I want to bind it onto the view, so I bind it onto a property. And to do that, we wrap it in square brackets. That's the property binding. And then additionally, we want to say, well, changes need to be propagated back into the JavaScript. And for that, we use the event binding, which is brackets. Okay, so square brackets and round brackets if you want bidirectional data binding. Okay, now when I do that, you'll see that immediately Windstorm appears as the value. And if I were to quickly change this to add no, I'm not going to change it. No, I'm not going to change it. There's no way for you to see that it's updating the model behind the scenes.
You can show the name in the label.
Yeah, I can. So you could, for example, say hero.name underneath it, and you can see it updated there. Okay, so the two-way data binding works. Sorry, Windstrom. That's going to happen a lot. Okay. So this shouldn't have worked out of the box if you follow the instructions on Angular's site, because on Angular's site, it doesn't by default import the forms module. You need this module imported to get that functionality. If this were gone, it would all break, saying that ng model doesn't exist, I don't know this thing, and have a crisis of existence. But StackBlitz does the right thing by default, which is pretty cool. All right, so we don't need to update the module, but that's where you would import the module. I've lost track. Okay, declare heroes component, that's fine. And it also automatically updated the hero component. Okay, so that gives us the super simple how we nest a component inside another component and work with an object. So that's technically the hero editor done. I promise it gets harder from here on out. Okay. Now we're going to move on to dealing with a list of data, right? Because we don't want to just deal with Mickey Mouse scenarios. So what we're going to start off by doing, we're going to start off by creating a set of mock heroes. So in the root of our application, we're going to create a file called mock-heroes.ts and ts, yes. Okay, and this is so that we start using our application like we're going to need to if we had an actual backend. And these are only the starting steps, so this is just going to be fake data for the moment. And inside here, I give you permission to copy this as well. So inside a list, there is a set of heroes in here. Okay. And those heroes are, firstly, it imports the hero class that's in parallel to it, and it creates this const. Okay. Now there are three ways to declare a variable in JavaScript. Okay. Var, let, and const. Okay. Damn it. Okay, ignore the compilation errors. Now this one is the original one, and it's got some very, very weird idiosyncrasies. Okay. One of those idiosyncrasies is called hoisting. Okay. So if you declare, for example's sake, var blah equals 1 over here, let's go over here for example's sake. What that actually does is it says, well, there is the assignment, that happens over there, but I'm going to hoist this variable to the top of the function scope that I exist within. Okay? Remember I was talking about how everything in JavaScript used to be global? This is how that stuff ended up happening. Now, importantly, it's function scoped, not block scoped. So if you had something like a for each or a for loop, I'm just completely faking it for the moment, and you declared a variable in here, it would allow you to redeclare it, faking that you're redeclaring it, but you're not actually. It's only declaring it once at the top of the file, and you're reusing the same variable. Okay, so var is a really rusty, poorly looked after and maintained chainsaw that if you use, you will hurt yourself with in a long enough timeline. Okay, so don't use var. Rather use let. Okay, because let is its replacement. Now, why did they not? Here's a test, right? Why did they not just fix var? Don't break the web. Rule number 1, don't break the web. Okay, so they can't fix var. It sucks. It sucks forevermore because we can't fix it. So instead what we'll do is we'll add something else. So we added something called let. And let is block scoped in the same way. What did I've broken this thing so fundamentally. Okay, I'll fix it later. Yeah. Let is block scoped in the same way as you'd expect anything else to be block scoped. Okay, so it works like a normal sane programming language, which is cool. It's just not a really commonly used one, because let implies that we're going to reassign that variable the whole time, right? And we don't, and that's the reference to that variable, which is sort of an anti-pattern, right? We don't want to mutate our variable references. We want to set the thing once and then copy it and create new ones, right? Or set properties inside it. Does that make sense? So ironically, we don't use let very often. We recommend using const, because const means that if you assign it and then later on try and assign it again, it tells you, no, you can't do that. You've already assigned this thing. If you assign it again, you're probably doing something wrong. So ironically, const is more what you need. It's not the same. It's not really the same as const in C#. So just something to keep in mind. Yeah, I didn't break it. I unbroke it. Okay, cool. So now we've got our mock heroes and we can go back on script. So what we're going to do is we're going to, in our heroes component, we're going to use these mock heroes, right? Because we don't just want one hero, we want a list of heroes. Okay? So let's import mock underscore heroes. Okay, I'll show you what I often do, right? First write the from part, which is going to be mock-heroes, okay? And then write the import, because now I can get the benefit of auto-completion. Okay, if I write the import first, ironically, it seems more natural, but if you write the import first, it won't know where you're trying to find this thing from. Okay, so import heroes, and then we're going to create a property that's called heroes, very creatively, that is going to be a hero array. Okay. Now, that's how you define an array of a particular type in TypeScript. There are actually two ways. You can use generics. Who knows generics? Yes, awesome. Should have used it. You can write an array of type hero like that. Okay. Or you can write the hero array syntax like that. They are, for these purposes, functionally identical. There are some subtleties, but you really don't need to know about those. Okay, so we're going to write a heroes array, and then what we're going to do is on our initialization method, not in our constructor, or are we going to do that? Yes, we are. Okay. Let's not do that. That's a bad idea. Let's not do that. Let's do it on our initialization, because now we can learn something useful. Okay. So these properties are declared on the scope, but if we try and access them here, you'll see that heroes doesn't exist as a variable that you can use, right? It's been written onto this object, and we're now dealing with an instance of that object. So we would access it by this.heroes, okay, firstly. Then secondly, we've now got this const that we've imported at the top, and we want to set it over here. Now, the lifecycle of Angular, what this means is that the stuff that is outside here happens at parse time, so when the file is parsed. The stuff that's in here and in here happen at object construction time, And the stuff that happens in this method, the ng on init, happens when the thing is written to the page. So we don't want to do it at construction time for the same reason that you don't want to do very heavy external work in your constructor in C# or Java. Okay, you only want to do that work when the thing is actually going to be visible on the page. So we defer that. Great. So that gives out our list, and now we're going to try using a different type of Angular selector. So we're going to start off with, at the top of the page, creating an H2, okay, that we're going to call my heroes, very creatively. Oh no, I broke that. My heroes, okay. And then underneath that, we're going to use a UL. Okay, so UL, which is an unordered list of items, and we're going to set a class on it that is going to be heroes, that we're going to use later. Okay, then underneath that, we're going to try and create an li for each hero, so a list item in our unordered list, and for each of those, we're going to have a span. Okay, and that span is going to have a class equal badge. Oopsie. And then inside there, I promise I can type. Hero.id, we're going to put the hero ID, and then after that, we're just going to write in the hero.name. Now this isn't going to work yet, right? And the reason why this is going to work. Oh. I didn't think that through. Okay, so I've used the hero property, which is this property over here. Okay, because the hero property still exists. Okay, that's not what I want to do. I want to use this heroes list that we've created. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to, inside here, I am going to add an ng4 on the list item. Okay, so ng4 is another Angular particular directive that has a whole bunch of behavior, and it's prefixed by a star, because the star indicates a generator. I am going to generate code inside the DOM. I'm going to generate multiple nodes. I'm going to show and hide nodes, that kind of thing, if it makes sense. Okay, so when you see a star, you know that it's mutating the HTML in a weird way. Cool. And in this, what we're going to do is we're going to say, let hero of heroes. Oh, we don't need a semicolon. Yay, and then immediately on the right-hand side, it appears. So this is just a for of loop, and we're aliasing this in the front end. So just in the template side, no access to the TypeScript of that hero. We're technically redefining hero and hiding it, but I think in this context it's kind of okay right now. But it could be weird, like we saw previously where there was an unintended side effect. Okay. So that's pretty cool, and it gives us a really useful thing. We'll style it a little bit later on so that it looks right, but we're just going to carry on with the functionality. What we want to do is we want to put these two pieces together. So we want to say that this list of heroes needs to interact with this stuff at the bottom. Okay? So we can, in principle, edit each of our heroes. So what we're going to do is we're going to use an event binding on the li that is a click event binding. Okay? So it just triggers off of the normal JavaScript click event, which is going to be on select in this case. Okay? We're going to pass through a reference to our variable hero, which is our hero variable. So this hero is the same reference as that hero. Okay, not the value, the reference of it, which is really important. And then to pass this through, we're going to, that's not what I wanted to do, we're going to wrap it in the event binding for the click event. Okay, so that Angular, this is actually an event, you need to do something about this. But this is not going to work because I haven't defined this onSelect. It's actually interesting that it's rendering. It should be giving an error. So in here, I want to write an instance method on this component, and that's going to be onSelect. Okay, great. So I'm going to write this onSelect method. I'm going to take in a hero, and importantly, I want that hero to be typed, so I can start getting some type safety out. Okay, so that's how I would type that parameter. Cool, so there I've got a hero that is typed. On click, I'm going to select it, and let's just make sure that it works. I'm going to console.log that hero. Cool. Sorry?
I can't see the tab.
Okay, it's up here. Okay. Good point. Please let me know if you can't see. All right. So if I then open this, which is going to cram everything together, if I click on one of those, you should see, it, depending on which one I click on, it logs to the console. So remember earlier I was trolling Rory when he spent like an hour and a half creating a logger and I said logging should be easy? Guess what? Well, what do you mean it's not like for like? I can log.warn. Do you want me to log.warn? I can warn. Console.warn, right? Console.warn. Oh no, there's a warning. I can error. So I'm not saying JavaScript is superior. I'm just saying that JavaScript is superior. Okay, sorry, trolling aside. Okay, so let's move away from that. So the click is working, but that's not what we wanted to do. What we wanted to do is we wanted to keep track of which hero was selected. So this hero here we're going to repurpose, and we're going to repurpose this to selected hero so that it's named properly. And then on here we're going to go this dot selected hero equals hero. Okay, and you'll see that the rendering is still broken because this needs to change in here to be selected hero.name, and then it all works. And then as we select it on the right hand side, you can see it changes at the bottom. Sorry, you are in the worst position for this. Okay, and if we were to say Mr. Nice is now going to transform into Mr. Awesome, we can see that it updates immediately. Okay, cool. Great, awesome, slick. There are some, what am I missing? Click event, unselect, selected hero name. I'm just going to make the markup a match because otherwise I'm going to get confused later on. Oh, I think I was supposed to leave this stuff. Oh well. Oh well. Okay, so the stuff I told you to delete, I don't think you needed to delete. I'll understand if you hate me. Selected hero.name. We're going to pipe it to uppercase. Cool, awesome. That's great. Oh no, that's not great. That's great. Okay. Windstorm details. Then we're going to have our div. Let's see if Emmet works. Div span hash ID. No, it doesn't work. Div, close the div, span, close the span, ID, and selected hero.id. Cool, that's there. That's there, that's there, that's there. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Useful. All right, so the only challenge that we're going to have, if you follow along in the documentation, is that there is a bug here. There's something that will break on page load. And a high five to whoever can figure out what that thing that is that will break on initial page load. Oh wait, no, never mind, not yet, not yet. And this is going to clue you. All right, so there we can see. So why is that broken? Why does that suck? Okay, so it's because the selected hero is now obviously empty. Okay, we're just operating on the list of heroes. When we load the page, the selected hero is not there. So we could write a whole bunch of complicated if-else code and make this type safe or null safe, and that's one way of going through it. But there's one useful thing that Angular does, because this is actually a super common scenario, right? And that's another one of the generators called ngIf. So what we can do is we can create a div that wraps the whole bottom area, okay? And inside here we can say star ngIf on some condition. Now if that condition is true, it will insert that into the DOM. If that condition isn't true, it will remove it from the DOM, not breaking rendering. Okay, now, how we'd obviously do this is we would end up going, well, it's selected hero, right? So selected hero could be is not undefined, or selected hero is not null, or selected hero is not 0, for example's sake. These are all ways that things can evaluate to false in JavaScript. So also an important point, remember I said value versus reference earlier. The difference between a not equals equals or a equals 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 versus an equals equals is very important in JavaScript. So this one, a simple double equals, does what is called type coercion, where it'll say, well, I've got a number here and a string here. I can make them the same if you want them to be the same, and it'll do toString on the number. And it'll do weird things, right? If you do a triple equals, it will either do an exact comparison or it'll do a reference comparison with objects. Okay, so really important to note, don't ever use the double equals. There's no reasonable, realistic case behind which you would want to use those. Always use triple equals and not double equals. Okay. And I know, it's weird. But okay, so another thing, that you don't really need to do this, right? Because JavaScript has a really, really cool concept. And that concept is truthy and falsy. Okay? All of those things evaluate to false. Okay? If something is undefined, it's false. So I can just say, well, if this thing is undefined, it's the same as that. If this thing is null, well, it's the same as that. If it's 0, I've run out of space on the right. Let's close this. If it's 0, well, it's the same as that. So much like many dynamic languages, it lets you just simplistically say, well, if this thing evaluates to one of the myriad ways that it could be false, don't do the following piece of code. And this is a particular idiom in JavaScript that's really, really common and really powerful when you start embracing it. So don't fight truthy falsy, embrace it, and rather think about writing your system in context of it. You'll be happier for it. Okay, and we want to optimize for happiness. Correct. How are we looking? Is everyone cool? Everyone following? Okay. Anyone not following? Anyone need help? I've spoken a lot. Okay. Okay, awesome. So you'll see that what happens immediately is that it doesn't render the bit at the bottom, but as soon as we click on something, it will show the thing at the bottom, which you won't see from that side, I'm really sorry. But it is there, I promise it's there. Okay, cool. So then we've got the selected item. We've got the selected item at the bottom. Let me just make sure I'm in the right place. Hide empty details with ngIf. Style the selected hero. Okay, so what we want to do is we're going to now look at adding some styling onto this. So on our selected hero, we want to style the selected hero differently. So we are going to, in addition to our click event, we're going to have a style event. And we're going to use the property binding onto that style event. And rather than just go like class equals selected, which is how you would do it in just vanilla HTML, what we're going to do is we're going to say, well, we're going to collapse those two. And this is the one part where Angular is a little bit weird. So we're going to say our selected class will apply given a condition. And that condition is going to be hero triple equals selected hero. Okay. Awesome. And if we do that, it will apply the selected class, but you'll only see it once we copy and paste the styling in. So there's a lot of CSS here at the bottom of the page, and I'm not going to type that all out because that would take forever. But then what we would do is we would put in a heroes component, paste it in there, and then you'll see we get some nice styling out of the box. So you can click on Mr. Nice. Mr. Nice has now got a different style. Can you see that? Is that clear enough to everyone? It's got a different style to the rest of them. And then we can say Mr. Nice is now Mr. Awesome. Okay. And then Mr. Awesome updates immediately. Cool. Great. So before we carry on, can I make sure that everybody's here, at least, following along, writing the stuff? I mean, I enjoy coding and I enjoy talking. And I struggle talking and coding, and I can do it for another 2 hours, but I just want to make sure that we're all in the same place so that we can follow along in a tactile way. Okay. Everyone, like all hands up. If you're following along, hands up, please. So if your hands are still down, it means I need to help you. Do I need to help you? Can I help you? Sorry?
I'll catch up.
You'll catch up. Oh, I was talking about the guy behind you, but yeah. You'll also catch up. Sorry, I appreciate that there's a parallax problem here. Okay, so over here, feel free to copy and paste to get there. If you want to get there quickly, it's got the final code at the bottom. So you can just start a new stack blitz thing and basically just copy and paste those 3 tabs and you should be up to date. Okay, cool. So I'm going to carry on, right? Let's roll with it. Let's roll with it. So at the moment, we've got this thing where we've written a whole bunch of interactive code in one page, okay? Which sort of counters the thing that I said earlier. We don't want to write just one big monolithic page. We want to write lots of little things, okay? And the component-based design of Angular is one of the essential bits and pieces of it. So what we're going to do next is we're going to change this master detail into discrete components. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a dedicated hero detail component. So rather than the CLI, we're going to right-click, generate our component, okay, and it's going to be hero-detail. Cool. It'll generate our hero detail component, and then we're going to start moving stuff in there. Okay, so we're going to move this stuff into hero detail. So let's cut it from there and paste it into our hero detail. Okay, we're also going to change selected hero to hero so that it is. I'm gonna try and see if the command works. It does. Oh my word! So Control D selects multiple instances of that exact word. So it's literally Visual Studio Code's behavior. Okay, and then I can just change that to hero. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay. You want to buy all of it. You want to buy the blue one.
I want this in Java, please.
This in Java. No, you can't have it in Java because Java is not allowed to have nice things. Okay, cool. So now we've got the hero. We haven't defined the hero here, and obviously that's going to break. So we're going to import our hero from, it's one step back, hero TS, okay? And we're going to create our hero property, okay? And now things should work, and things should be okay. However, we're going to need a mechanism to get stuff from here, this component, into this component, okay? And that's a common enough problem that they've got an attribute that takes care of it. So what I can do is I can use the input attribute, and then I can just decorate this property with @input, okay? That means that I can, over here, inside my hero's component, I can reference app hero details, like I would have previously. Just open it and make sure that everything's working. No, hero details is not. Hero detail. Thanks, guys. Okay, app hero detail, and I can set that hero as a property. So I can now go, cool, well I want to, as a property binding, set the hero property on app hero detail to selected hero. Selected hero. Cool. Okay. Now if I've done everything right, I can click on Mr. Nice, and at the bottom it'll show Mr. Nice details. And they're in 2 separate components. And that's how you start splitting this stuff apart, right? And importantly, because I'm passing the reference to that object, when I change that object, everything that references it changes automatically. Okay, so up here, even though in 2 separate components, it does update, which is pretty cool. So there's our selected hero. Hero is fine. We've put that. Yes, we've done that. We've done that. We've done that. Like, and that's it. I mean, that's our hero detail bits and pieces, right? So what we're going to move on to next because we've now taken apart the front-end interactivity, but we still have this messy concept of how we access our heroes. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to use this thing called services. So if you're following along, we're on the services section down here. Okay, cool. And we're going to talk about, building pieces of reusable code. So services are basically anything that it's the base Lego block in Angular applications, right? Services are things that are injectable. So we technically wrote stuff that's injectable now in our component and our module, but services are basically saying, well, this is something you can build up from. So how we do that is we're going to create a new service in the root of our application. Okay, it would either be via the CLI, but unfortunately not. So we're going to create a new service, and we're going to call it hero.service. What do you mean I can't? No. Oh, okay. Hero. Is that going to do the right thing? It does do the right thing. Yeah. So we created our hero service that exports a hero.service file. Okay, got it. And we'll see that it's got this @injectable class or annotation. Doesn't take any metadata, so there's no particular configuration stuff. What that means to the module is that it means that it's a thing that I can provide. Okay? Remember we were talking, you did dependency injection earlier with Rory. We explained it in quite a lot of depth because Spring relies on it very heavily. So does Angular. Okay. And this is how you would say that inside this module that has these components as a part of it, this is the stuff that needs to be provided for the module to work. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off by just writing a simple getHeroes method here. So getHeroes. Great. GetHeroes method, and the getHeroes method is going to return a hero array. Okay, and it is just going to use. Oh, I'm not gonna do that. No, let's not do that. That's probably not going to work. Okay, so let's import hero from one step back hero.ts. Okay, is it one step back? No, it's not. It's not. It's in parallel with the service. Okay, so we're going to import hero from there. Great, that's hero. It's complaining now because we're not returning anything. We're additionally going to import mock heroes. Oh, sorry, it's heroes from mock heroes. Hero herpes. Heroes from mock heroes. It's unfortunate those characters are so close to one another. Okay, and inside here we're just going to return heroes. That's typed right. Okay, cool. So now we're going to getHeroes method, we're going to return heroes, and now we want to use this. So how we use it is in our heroes class, or heroes component. This is where we were using heroes directly. Now we want to elect to use the service rather than heroes. So let's delete that. Okay. Now we're going to import hero service from, and it's one step back hero.service, if I remember correctly. Okay. And then here we want to say, well, I want to use constructor injection to get the hero service that's instantiated. And that's going to be hero service of type hero service. Okay, hero service. And that will just do the right thing. It will give me the constructor injected reference to a thing that I can just use. Which is awesome, except I don't want to use it in a constructor. I want to use it on initialize. Because if I'm going to then use this service to do complex external work like access a REST endpoint or whatever the case may be, I don't want to do it at object creation time. I want to do it when the thing is on the page. Okay? So luckily, and this is because it's a more modern language, and this is a common requirement, TypeScript has the ability to just additionally decorate using a private keyword inside the constructor that says, well, now suddenly this constructor parameter is a private property for the whole class, which is slick. I mean, it's really, really nice. And that means that now I can use the hero service and just go this dot hero service dot get heroes. And on the right hand side, yay, everything should work. Cool. So that's all right. We've done all of those things. We've got our heroes component rendering, and everything that we've done previously should be still functional, right? Even though we're not using that heroes array explicitly anymore. But this doesn't give us an accurate way behind how we want to use this thing eventually as a data source. Okay? How we want to use this thing is as the concept of some kind of asynchronous work. Okay. Now there are a number of ways to do asynchronous work in JavaScript and in web. Ajax, who's heard of Ajax or used Ajax, right? Who's heard of or used promises? Okay. So promises are a very modern way of using using Ajax in a way that's sane and not going to call back hell. And you can use promises inside TypeScript and inside Angular. However, they have opinions. And one of the opinionated parts of the framework is they really like the observable pattern, and they really like functional reactive programming. Okay. So they use a framework called RxJS incredibly extensively to make Angular itself work, and then they surface that to all of the bits and pieces so that you can plug into Angular most effectively. And this is what makes it incredibly fast and incredibly flexible. So it's super, super cool, and we're going to use the observable stuff that's a part of Rx. And hopefully, for those of you, has anybody done observable pattern? Okay. Or observer pattern? No? Okay. Gang of Four patterns, man. Old school. Rocket old school. I should have brought the book. Anyway, irrespective, we're going to use an observable. So, we're actually just going to fake an observable to start off with. Okay, and how we fake the observable is we're going to import observable from rxjs/observable. Come on, Stack Blitz, please work. Okay, that's promising. Okay, so the observable is really cool as a thing in and of itself, but we're also going to now monkey patch onto this observable. We're going to import a method called of from rxjs observable of. Cool. Great. So we've now monkey patched observable with something called of, and that gives us the ability to either go observable.of heroes, okay, or more readably, just cut out the observable part and just use of. Okay. It's still going to complain because observable hero is not assignable to type hero because we've got explicit typing here. So our typing is doing exactly what it's supposed to. But we want to return an observable, so we're just going to use the generic parts of TypeScript, so to create an observable of type hero array, which is a mouthful. Okay. But what that means is that this thing is going to return a reference to something that will ultimately resolve as a stream of data that we're completely faking as a static array. So it is very much like trying to hit a fly with a broadsword at this point in time, but we're trying to teach concepts here, right? If this was a WebSocket, for example's sake, you would be binding onto a WebSocket that was streaming data back to you. Or if it was a functional reactive endpoint in Spring that was using server-sent events for the server to send data proactively down to the client, like Rory's going to talk about later this evening, this is how you would have a front-end built to cater for and accommodate that. So this stuff is useful. It's not just an abstract concept. Okay, but then how we unfortunately have to use this changes. So you'll see that everything is fundamentally broken. And that's because if we go to our heroes component, this heroes thing is actually not a heroes array anymore. It's an observable. But we want to deal in terms of arrays for the moment. Okay. There are ways to let the observables flow all the way through, but that's beyond the scope of today's session. So what we're going to do is we want to update our heroes array, but we're going to call getHeroes. It's going to give us an observable reference that we can keep a hang of, but what we ideally want to do is we want to subscribe to any updates from that observable. And to do that, we can pass through a function I'm just going to hide this for a second. Okay, I'm going to show you some cool stuff now. So we're going to pass through a function, and that function will take a hero as a callback, and then we can set this dot heroes equals heroes. Should have been heroes, sorry. Okay, we can set this dot heroes, and that's cool. We can set that callback function, and it should still work. Please work, doesn't work. Okay, and that's because this is different inside a function. So we're rather going to then this function use a fancier fat arrow function, which is one of the newer JavaScript features, which means that we get rid of the function keyword and we use that equal sign greater than to indicate that this is an arrow, or this is a function that inherits the this from whatever it's contained in. So it's like a lambda in C# or Java or C++. Okay, they do have lambdas in C++, right? I think so. Okay, anyway, either way. And then the nice thing about this is that there's a whole bunch of stuff that we don't need. And we can inline this, and it gives us a very succinct way of providing a callback function that does something meaningful inside the scope of the class. Okay, so if we open that, hopefully everything still works. So now we've got this observable that we're binding to changes to, we're setting it onto the scope, and we've got the ability to then still change it. Okay. And if this thing were to become asynchronous, which it's going to in the fullness of time, the pattern of access will not change. Okay, so this is how we're going to write stuff to access data inside an Angular application. We're going to lastly now add some logging stuff. Okay, so we're going to add something that's going to help us visualize what this reactive thing is doing. So we're going to add a message component. Messages component. Okay, and that messages component is going to have, we're first going to add it, and then we're going to put some stuff in it. So inside our app component, we're going to put it at the bottom. So app-messages, which is going to be put there. And then we're going to create a service that this is going to be reliant on. So very quickly, we're going to create our service, which is going to be our messages service. Enter. Inside our messages service, we're going to add a couple things. So firstly, we're going to have an array of strings that is going to represent our messages. We're going to default initialize it because, okay, we're going to default initialize it because we want it to not be null. And then we're going to add two things. We're going to add messages, add messages, and we want to clear messages. Okay, I'm going to go through this really, really quickly, and then maybe take a break so I can stop talking for a bit. Messages, string. Okay. And what we're going to do here is we're just going to treat this array really simply, and we're going to push whatever message gets passed through to the end of the array. Maybe if I typed what I said I was going to type, things would work. Yeah? Cool. And then on clear, we're just going to reset messages. Great. Awesome. How we are then going to use this is firstly inside our component. Am I inside our component? No, inside hero service. So inside hero service, we're going to inject our messages service, and this is the same stuff that we did previously. So we're going to inject our messages service, messages service. Okay, it's going to complain at us. Why is it going to complain at us? We didn't reference it. That's right. So we need to import messages service from messages.service. Okay, format that so it's pretty, and then we're going to get it right over there. Okay, and then we're going to use it. So what this is illustrating is that you can inject a service inside another service, and then Angular will disambiguate the order of resolving them, if that makes sense. So that you can create complex hierarchies of services that are interdependent on one another. And it'll do the right thing by and large, unless there are certain scenarios where you can create circular references and it won't know how to start the application up. But it'll let you know really early on. And none of the DI frameworks are immune to that. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to use our messages service, which we're going to mark as private. Okay, and then we're going to go this dot messages service dot add, and we're going to say inside here, hero service fetched. Okay, cool. Now we want to, so that should just work. What we want to do is we want to now write that into our messages object here. So over here, we're also going to inject the messages service, messages service. Okay, we're going to import it. I'm going to try it. I'm going to see if it does the right thing. No, it doesn't do the right thing. So Visual Studio Code has really, really buggy functionality that lets you automatically import stuff in TypeScript. But it's buggy and it doesn't work here, so unfortunate. Messages service from, and it's one step back. Messages dot service. Okay, cool. Right, so that's all we need. We're going to, rather than private, going to expose this as public so that it can be accessed from the template. Okay, so we can just use the message service directly, and we don't need to now write code to unroll the message service. Because all we want to do in our component is we want to show a list of the last messages. Okay, and I'm just going to take a shortcut, if you don't mind, if you don't object. Over here, okay, and I'll talk through what I'm doing. Okay, so this thing is just going to access the message service directly. It's going to see if messages.length is set. And if it is set, then we're going to expose some functionality. So the button clear, and clear is going to have a click message that just calls message service.clear directly. And we're going to, on an ng4, show each of the messages that has been added. Okay. Now this could be seen as a little bit of an anti-pattern because we're exposing some of the internals of one of its dependencies. But I think in certain scenarios, expedience has to win because code that you don't have to write and maintain is code that doesn't have bugs in. And if you were trying to facade the message service and write additional layers of clear methods or whatever the case may be, like it wastes time, bytes, and it doesn't really add much value. So in this context, I think it's fine, but if you're mutating the behavior of what it is that you're passing back at all, then the component needs to match closely what the template is providing. Does it make sense? I hope that makes sense. Let's see if it works. I mean, that'll be an important point. Cool. So if I select something, no, it's not working. Why is it not working? Why are you not working? Why are you not working? Why is this not working? Okay, because I'm definitely not breaking messages service. Okay, messages component, ngf messages.length, message service, messages. Hey, is that legit? Damn it. Message service. I'll definitely break time. Okay, so hopefully at the bottom, hero service fetched. No, I've still broken something. Okay, so that's at least some of the way there. Message service.messages. There are messages, the length is being set. Why are we not seeing the messages? Okay, so tell you what, I'm going to fix this. I think we take a break if that's okay, if anybody doesn't mind, for about 15 minutes and then reconvene. and then we'll try and catch everybody up. Copy, paste, catch. Are there any questions so long while I fix this? Yes? Yes. Okay. So the answer is yes, but depending on how, it can be really complex. And complex for a number of reasons. So one of the things that Angular does is it uses something under the hood called Zone.js, which basically fakes thread local storage for JavaScript, which doesn't have thread local storage. So it does really weird things with how it bootstraps into the page, which is why you need stuff like this, right? You can't just link it from a CDN somewhere. Those days are past. There are no new client-side frameworks other than Vue.js that let you work like that. Okay. So yes, it's possible. Yes, there are ways to embed an AngularJS application inside Angular and then systematically refactor it and improve it. And you can even share some of the dependency injection between AngularJS and Angular. And I can show you some more specifics around that, but it's not a trivially easy path, if that makes sense. Any other questions? Okay. Cool, so let's take a short break.
I think that's enough more quickly. I think that's enough more quickly.
We'll see.
Thanks for the patience.
Okay, so is everybody on the same page? Does everybody have a thingy? A thingy that looks kind of like this. Okay, anybody not? Don't be shy. Do not. Okay, can I show you the eject button? There is a link over here that says live example. Okay, smash open the live example and it'll give you a fresh instance that is the one basically up to speed with what you've got. Okay, where we need to be right now. So I'm going to do the first part of the routing and you're going to do the rest. Okay, so I'm going to explain the fundamental parts of routing and just separate the two parts out, and then for the rest of the 45 minutes you folks are going to go through the routing bits and pieces. I'm not going to get to the HTTP stuff today. The HTTP stuff in here is a fake anyway, using the in-memory API, because we don't have a backend. But I can recommend going and taking a look at it over the next bit. And it'll synergize well with what you did earlier today in the Java bootcamp with Rory, with the REST and Spring Boot stuff. Okay. So we're going to start off by trying to create, and let's see if I can open this image in a new tab. Okay, we're going to create a simple view that's got a dashboard with a list of the top heroes, and we're going to create a second view that has the list of heroes as we've got it, and then potentially a third view. That's what you folks are going to do. A third view that's got the details. And we're going to navigate between the two. So we can use the little fake menu bar at the top, not fake, but the little menu bar at the top to navigate between the list and the dashboard. And you can either click on the top heroes to go to the hero details, or you can click on the hero as normal to go to view details. So that's what we're going to try and achieve. And I'm going to show you the first part of how to do that. And we're going to show you essentially how the router works. So we're not going to generate it via the CLI. I'm going to create it by hand. I'm just going to start off by copying this part. Okay. Inside our app folder over here, I'm going to create a file that we're going to call app-routing.module.ts. I think that's what it needs to be called by convention. Yeah, routing module TS. Okay, and that it declares an Angular module exactly like we would expect anything else. Okay, and this is, why is it giving me? Oh, okay, it's giving me a weird icon. A cool icon. Hey, it looks like a little road sign. Sorry, amused by small things. And then from there, what we want to do is this module is only going to exist for the router, so that our routes are completely segregated from the rest of the application. So we're going to import the router module from at Angular /router. Okay. So this is the first big new piece for Angular that we've used since the two-way data binding. And then additionally, we're also going to need the routes, okay, that we're going to create something for. So for the router module, we are going to need to take this entire module, this entirely separate module, and use it in our application to drive the application. So what we're going to do is we're going to additionally, other than just working with the router module, we're also going to export the router module, so that anything that imports this module gets all of that stuff. And this is how you start prying apart the Angular application. Okay, routing module, that's what we need there, that's what we need there. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to create a static list of routes, okay, for our front end. I'm going to go const routes, and we're going to type it. Is going to be, an array. An array of objects. And the first object that we care about is going to have 2 bits. So it's going to have a path, and it's going to have a component. Okay? And the path is, the component is going to be the heroes component, and the path is going to be /heroes. Okay. So the hero component we're going to need to import here. So import heroes component from and it's heroes /heroes /heroes dot component, Okay, and that means that we've defined this route, and this route is what URL am I going to match, and which thing am I going to pass to the router outlet. Okay, and I will say that word again later, more meaningfully in context. So we need to import our routing configuration because it just exists here as a separate constant. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a method, initialization method on the router module that is router module.forRoute, and you'll see that there are 2 methods, forChild and forRoute. So you can hopefully immediately realize that this stuff nests really well, and it lets you create little sub-modules that have its own routing config, its own components and everything to split apart the application. And we're going to pass our routes into our router module. Okay, so this is our configuration. This is how we initialize our configuration in the simple possible case. Now, I said router outlet earlier, and I said that with very particular meaning, because what we need to do is this isn't like .NET or Spring Boot, where we've got full page loads that a route resolves to something that generates in HTML and pushes it down the wire. In Angular, we actually have a much more complex concept of route. So that means that we want to take a part of the page, and depending on the matching of URL, render something to a part of the page. And that part is called the router outlet. Now, where this gets complicated is that we could actually have a route match multiple outlets and do different things on different outlets. And we can nest those outlets. We can do really, really complex bits and pieces. But in the simplest possible case, what we want to do is we don't want to explicitly have to write our app heroes component in there. What we want to say is we're going to have a router-outlet. Okay. And then depending, oh no, are you not going to? Oh, okay, it's going to break still. Don't worry, it's going to break still. Because what we need to do, it's going to. I think I need to go in here. Sorry. This is unfortunately the part where we haven't tested this with Stack Blitz. It'll work a lot easier with the CLI, and I hope this will work fine. So let's go app routing module. So import app routing module, routing module from app routing.module. Okay, that's great. And we declare this thing completely separately. And now in here, we have to import our app routing module. Okay, thank goodness. The error goes away. So you'll see that there's nothing rendered because we don't have the right route. Okay, let's just make sure that everybody's there. Do you know what I did? So I've got the app-routing module, and then I've imported it into the app module. I am going to pause here because this is a step that's outside of the instructions, so there's no way for you to get back here trivially. Okay, so in our app-routing module that we had here, we defined that the heroes path would lead to the heroes component. And how we view that is by this little fake URL bar, by going /heroes at the end, and then it renders our application exactly as we had it. Okay. So that's cool. That gives us a whole bunch of flexibility because now we can build little components that aren't stuck together. They aren't tightly coupled. They are now broken apart by this concept of a router that is completely separate from the app structure. Okay. Sure. Eyes. Okay. Okay. Cool. So, so that's the first part. That lets us navigate to the right place. Is anybody not there? Okay. Are you struggling to get there? With the router outlet. Okay. And that error would probably be because you haven't imported the app routing module in your app.module. Or have you done that? App routing.module, and then in your import section, have you done that part? Let's just go back to the router module. So you're exporting the router module, but you're not importing it. I'll be there in a sec. So I'm just going to go here so that you can see the whole of that. So what you want to do is you want to declare your routes, Okay, and then you want to import your router module.forRoot and export your router module. Okay. That's because after router module, you also need to import roots and type roots. So you can see that they're on line 3. So router module, comma roots. I suppose I didn't explicitly talk about that. No, it's on line 3. Line 3 was right. Okay, so I didn't explicitly talk about this, but you can see here, this is where this thing is exporting multiple classes that we're importing. So that's pretty common. Yeah?
I still have to issue where I found
okay, but you need to import it. So, okay, so that's an important point that I suppose we haven't discussed yet. There is this difference between TypeScript modules and Angular modules. And it does get confusing at times because it feels like you've got double work, but they're solving different problems. So you must remember that the TypeScript modules are letting you split apart your application to multiple different class files, so from a language perspective. The Angular modules are trying to decide how you use that metadata to bind your application together. So you do have to do both, and it does get a little bit verbose sometimes. It's unfortunately the problem with standards committees, is to make everybody happy. These are the answers that they come up with. So other languages like C# can be designed by one person and have strong opinions, or Perl in Larry Wall's case. Like nobody was allowed to decide what went into Perl except Larry Wall. With JavaScript or ECMA script, everybody has a say. We know how well that works. Okay, so is everybody here? If you're not here, please put up your hand. Okay. Okay, so we'll hang fire a little bit before we carry on. Do you need help? Yeah. I bet you it's a / euros at the end of your fake URL. So you go to the end of it, type / euros. There you go. So you're actually good.
Line 7 years of
Okay. Okay, let's take a look at your app routing module. Here it is. We imported that, we exported that. Okay, that looks like it worked.
When I go to the measure of the channels.
Okay, if you go to app component.html, you've got app hero still there.
I guess I need to remove that.
Yeah, you need to remove that and actually just remove hero. So you can take all of that out, and no, not the messages, just the heroes part, and then you need to add the router outlet. Okay, so for everybody else, there is this part here, this router outlet. So now what we've allowed ourselves to do is to say, well, this is our application shell, and the router outlet is the content of our application. Okay, so what's an analogy? So we used in .NET Core, we used view pages, right? We had view pages, and we had the idea of shared pages, which was like the master page, and then the individual different component views. This is that kind of analogy, except on steroids taken to the next level in JavaScript. Okay, cool. So that's where we were. Okay, so that's where we were. Anybody else not there? Cool, great. So what we're going to do is we're going to then start looking at how we build some kind of navigation between the two. Am I in the right place? Router outlet, yes. Nav. Okay, so what we're going to do at the top here, under our title, is we're going to add a nav. Okay, so a nav section. Okay, and in our nav section, we are going to have a single hyperlink So hyperlink, close hyperlink, oopsie, close hyperlink, and that hyperlink is going to be to heroes. Okay, so it's going to look like that button that we've got over there, and we're going to use a specific Angular directive rather than a hyperlink's href, and that's going to be router link. Okay, and that router link is going to be to /heroes. Okay. And what that gives us is it gives us a way of writing a hyperlink using semantic HTML, but also having the ability to plug into some of Angular's specifics. So when we've got router parameters, we'll use router functionality off of the hyperlink, and a bunch of extra stuff that we're not going to worry about right now. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is we want to, and this, let's just make sure that this works. It gives us the ability to, from our blank home page, go heroes and navigate to our heroes list. Okay, really easy, really simple, right? And these are relative paths. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to add the dashboard element. So we're going to right-click component and call it dashboard. Awesome. So we can do that solo. And then in here we're going to do a bunch of things. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to, in our TypeScript file, we're going to want to get another list of heroes, right? So we're going to want to import our hero service. So import hero service from WebPack hero.service. Okay. We're going to want to inject private hero service. Now it's good to keep these things named consistently so that you don't get confused, but TypeScript and Angular at compile time generates all of the injection stuff based off of the type, not off of the name. So you could just call this service if you were only using one service, or you could call it Bob if you really felt like, being belligerent. Okay, so what we're going to do in here, I want to follow the instructions, but I don't agree with the instructions, is we're going to call a getHeroes method. No, I'm not going to do this, because the instructions are done. No, I'm going to do it, okay, just because otherwise everyone's going to get confused. I'm going to create a getHeroes method, and in our getHeroes method, it is going to use our hero service, so this dot hero service. It's going to call hero service.getHeroes, and remember that that was an observable, right? Then we're going to subscribe to that observable, and we're going to do something. Okay? And this is going to give us a simple list of heroes. And I am going to, inside here, I've added the curly braces so I could represent it over multiple lines, right? Because we're struggling with horizontal space. And then in here, I'm going to say this.heroes, which is something that doesn't exist yet, equals heroes.slice. Okay? So we're going to take the first 5 items off of that heroes array. And then internally, we are going to go heroes, hero array. Okay. I'm going to complain about hero array, so we're going to import hero from WebPack and then hero. Cool. Okay. So that's going to give us the data on our dashboard. Okay. Then to match that up, we are going to, in our component, okay, we're going to throw all of this away. We're going to have an h3 that says top heroes, okay. And then we're going to have a div, and that div is going to have a couple styles that are already defined, I hope. Class, I might copy those styles across actually. Grid and grid-pad. Okay, and then inside here we're going to generate a whole bunch of anchor tags so we can leverage off of that router link again, right? So we've got a, awesome, and inside here we're going to specify a class col-1-4, which is super cryptic. I'm just copying it out, and then inside there we are going to have a div. Okay, and inside our div, we're going to have an h4. Just a slightly smaller heading, and inside there, we're going to say, well, hero.name. Okay. But now that's not going to work because we need to, at the top level, add a generator that's going to iterate over it. So remember we had our generator, which was star ng4. Okay. And we're going to say let hero of heroes. Hero of heroes, and that should work fine. Cool. Now, when we put the CSS, yeah, I'm just going to copy the CSS. So I'm going to go down here, blah 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 blah. Over here. Okay, got the CSS. Yes, I know. So that it looks right. But now we want to access this thing, right? And now the beauty of being able to access this is because we don't want to necessarily, I've done that. We want to just add a root. So we created a component and we want to be able to have the application loading it without having to change that whole structure each time. So now we can just go into our routing module and we can say, well, we're going to add an additional route that's got two elements, right? It's got the path that's going to say dashboard, and it's got a component that's going to be our dashboard component. Dashboard component. All right. I'm going to need to import our dashboard component from dashboard / dashboard component. Component. Okay, that's fine. And then it should exist, right? So if we do that, we should be able to go rather than heroes, dashboard, either one, and then see an awful dashboard that doesn't look right. Damn. Okay, well the CSS is broken, but we can see the dashboard items. Okay. Why is it not 5? Oh, it's 1 to 5. Okay, so it's only 4 items. It's slicing the top 4 items. Okay. An important gotcha, right? Slice and splice do 2 different things, and there's 1 character difference. Okay, splice actually mutates that array, so it actually cuts the items out and returns it. Slice just does an immutable copy of those parts of the array. Okay, so that's that. What we want to do, because this is getting tedious, is we want to by default go to the dashboard and then be able to go to heroes. So luckily our routing caters for that. So we can also add, as a fallback, a default route, okay, that's going to match path blank string, let's keep it consistent, and then it's going to redirect to dashboard. Okay. But because we've put an empty string there and we have to be explicit about stuff, it's going to say, well, we then need to tell it how do we want to match. Do we want to match on prefix or full or whatever the case may be? Because it is, like, is it an accident? Is it an omission that it's an empty string? Or do we want to do something deliberate? So for that we go path match full. So that means that if the whole suffix URL is, comma. If the whole suffix URL is an empty string, go to the dashboard by default. Okay. We've created on our app component, we created this nav bit, which we want to build off of. So let's make sure that we can have our nav there. And very similarly, I'm just going to copy and paste actually. We can now have our router link dashboard that has a text of dashboard. Okay. And then there's our dashboard. So we can now navigate to our dashboard, to heroes, and then back to our dashboard. Okay, makes sense. Any questions? Concerns? Root gestures? Cool, great. Okay, and now, as a part of the next step, is everybody here? Does everyone have this working? Or can we just stop and get this working before we carry on? Okay, awesome. Let me take a moment to figure out why the styles don't look right. Why are you not right? Did I do something wrong here? Okay. I forgot to type class module hero, so I literally wasn't applying the CSS class. Okay. So there it is. That's what it's supposed to look like. Okay. Okay, is everybody there? If you want to expedite it, perhaps for the moment, there are these 3 tabs that you can just copy and paste the content from for the dashboard component itself. And then just add because the details of that are not important, and then just add the routing module and the redirect. Or in the routing module, the dashboard, and then the redirect. Okay. Right, so we're going to carry on. We've added the dashboard route, the default route, navigating to hero details. So we're going to now generate a component for the, no, we've got a component for the hero detail, sorry, forgive me. So rather than putting the hero detail in there, we've got everything that we need. We just want to add a route so we can go straight to hero detail, right? Because we've got a separate component. So for that, we're going to go to our app routing, and here, before our default redirect component, we're going to add another one that's going to go path, detail, and this is an important one, detail, colon ID, okay? And then for component, we're going to use our hero, hero detail, promise I can type, hero detail component, import hero detail component from hero-detail / hero-detail that component. Okay, great. Okay, now the reason why we need this ID is because remember, when we're on the hero screen and we want to see the detail, we click on a specific one of these. So we can pass through the reference to a particular item that we're talking about, okay? But when we're using the router, we don't necessarily have that interaction or that context. So we use router parameters to pass that through. We covered router parameters as a part of the other frameworks, right? Rory, Jerry?
So we did controllers and also
router parameters, root parameters.
Yeah,
Okay.
we did IDs in the
Okay. So this is exactly the same, and this is Angular's way of handling those root parameters, okay? But now, how you consume that is very, very different. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is in our dashboard component, inside here, we want to change our hyperlink to also have a router link, okay? So what we're going to do is at the end of our class, we're going to have our router link, okay? And our router link is going to go to our / detail page or detail page, and then we want to put the ID for every single one of those hyperlinks in so that it can pass it through correctly. So what we're going to do here is we're going to pass in hero.id into our router link, okay? So on our dashboard. So then we'll see It's super, super, super tiny. But if you hover over it, in the bottom left-hand corner, it should tell you what the URL is, and it should have, for example, this one is detail/12. Okay. All right, so that's that. Let's not worry about that yet. Okay, we're not going to worry about our hero select. We just want to take that straight to our hero detail. Okay, and in our hero detail, what we now have to do is we now need to make sure that this thing understands that rather than just taking @input, that it needs to fetch the details for our hero based off of ID. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to, on init, and I'm just going to write the code exactly as they have it, rather than supplying my own opinions. So we're going to get hero. We're going to create a get hero method. Okay, that's instanced. And as a part of that, we want to get the ID from the router. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to go this dot root dot snapshot. Okay. We want to get the snapshot of whatever root it's on rather than the configuration, so the actual instance of that root, and we're going to get the parameter param map. So the list of parameters, we want to get the ID parameter from it. I know that's a mouthful. And for us to be able to do that, we need to import our root. And this is going to be, I believe it's activated root. Yeah, activated root. So we get to inject this idea that we want whatever the root is that's currently being activated, that we're going to fetch this stuff off of. Okay. We import this from the router. So import activated root from @Angular /router. Cool. And then we can get the ID. Thereafter, we want to get a particular hero based off of that ID. So we're going to write some prototypical code. So we want our hero service as well. That's going to be injected in here. I'm just going to reformat this to one of our conventions because we overload the constructor with quite a few things. So inside there, we are going to create our private hero service that we're going to then import. So import hero service from one step back, hero.service. Okay, there's all the things. Then we can on our hero service, this dot hero service dot get hero. That's what we want to do. And we want to pass the ID through. Okay. And that service doesn't exist, but we're going to create it. And then we want to subscribe to the response. Okay. And our response is going to return a hero, and we're going to set this dot hero to the hero that we get back. Okay. Now, this method doesn't exist, and we're going to create that next. Okay. So now we get to go to our hero service, and additionally to get heroes, oh, there's a whole bunch of copyright stuff. Oh, delete it. Don't do that with your copyright stuff. We'll get into trouble. Okay, ID int. ID number. Sorry, when I go into typing mode with TypeScript, I start thinking in terms of C#, unfortunately. There are no ints, there are only numbers. And numbers are both floats and ints. And they suck. Okay, so then the first thing we're going to do is we're going to use our same message service. I'm just copying that. And we're going to say fetched hero ID equals 1, ID equals. And rather than the simple strings, I'm going to use string interpolation, which is an awesome feature of JavaScript. So rather than single quotes, I'm going to use backticks. Okay? And that lets us go $ open curly brace, close curly brace, and pass an ID or anything. And as an aside, this is one of those really incredible features of JavaScript. It's really good at manipulating strings and creating strings and any kind of string templating, so much so that the next generation of these frameworks are all based off of strings. Sounds crazy, but it's really awesome. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to return our heroes. We're going to find an item in the heroes based off of the ID. So that we're going to pass a lambda through as well, like a little function. And we're going to go hero.id triple equals the ID that we passed in. Okay, so that's going to find that hero. Okay, but we want to return an observable so we can subscribe to it. So we're going to do the exact same little of trick, and we're just going to wrap that in an observable like that. Okay, great. So when we do that, unless I've made a mistake, this thing should get the ID and then match it back. And then we can see, let's try it. I'm going to open this in a new window because it's getting really, really cramped. Okay, so let's open it in a new window. I should be able to click on one of these, go to the detail page, and then have everything break. That seems like good behavior, hey? Subscribe is not a function. Subscribe, oh man. Thank you very much. Subscribe. And it's giving us this thing where it's saying string is not assignable to parameter of type number, because this thing out of the param map is actually just get. Okay, so I think we can go number and then just wrap it in a number, and then it'll create a new number based off of that string, and that'll explicitly use type coercion. You're going, and a semicolon, you're going to be tempted to do stuff like this, because you do have the ability to try and queue types looking like you can explicitly cast like you can in Java and C#. But remember that this doesn't exist at runtime. So it's not an actual thing. It only happens at compile time, and it's only when you've got untyped stuff, like an any type or something that's dynamically typed, that you can change it to be a particular thing. So what's far better is using JavaScript's type coercion. So number is a thing that exists, and you can call it and change a string into a number. Now hopefully that means that, yeah, it's reloaded 12. So if we go to our dashboard and we hit Narco, we see Narco loads up, and if we hit Magneto, Magneto loads up. Okay, so this is a really important facet, because now we've got the idea to completely decouple these things, push a lot of information into the router, and build these components that can be specific subparts of the application. So we've got 5 minutes left before we end. There's a whole bunch more here, systematically prying apart and writing that. I'd recommend going through the balance of the tutorial. There's a lot of cool stuff here, and then especially taking some time once you've gotten that working, going through the HTTP. It's a pity we couldn't get there, but where it simulates a data server, that can then easily be replaced. Okay, so we're going to take the chance to answer a couple questions. If anybody has them, please don't be shy. Other people might have the same ones. Okay, nothing? Anything? Hello? Yes?
Bootstrap.
Excuse me?
We just use Bootstrap normally.
You can just use Bootstrap normally, unless you want to use any of the JavaScript bits of Bootstrap. Okay, so if you want to use the JavaScript bits of Bootstrap, Angular runs inside something called Zone.js, which is isolated from just global JavaScript a little bit. So there are adapter libraries that you can install off of NPM. So NPM is amazing, and technically this is using NPM under the hood. Sorry, this is using NPM under the hood. And if we'd use the Angular CLI on your local machine, which I recommend you go and play around with, it also uses NPM to install bits and pieces. And you can find all the adapter libraries that you need on here. Importantly to remember that this namespacing stuff, this called scoping, this @Angular, is actually an NPM concept as well. So that's how anything that's under @Angular/anything is created by the Angular team and is relatively safe to use and download. If there's something else like ng- or Angular- something, who knows who put that there. and we care about security, right? We care about not injecting vulnerabilities into our code. So just be cautious of what you're downloading, what packages you're including off of the internet. Okay, I've got some funny stories about that as well. Any other questions? Anything else? So do you feel like the kid holding the big fish? Does anybody feel like that? No? Do you feel like that? Okay, awesome. Well, that's one person. 1 out of 40 is not too bad. Hello. Okay, cool. So I think that's it. We'll hang around obviously a little while if you have any questions and are too shy to ask. We've got more sessions tonight, which I think we're going to take a break and prep for, which are also interesting, especially if you care about web stuff, because I think it's all web-based. Cool. Thanks. I hope you learned something.